Hi there guys, got a little video here for you today on the red, white and blue wolf. Now last time you saw this rifle, we just finished it up and it needed programming and testing down the range. So we programmed it up, took it to the range and give it a good test, and unfortunately the results weren't that great. The rifle was struggling to achieve an inch group at 50 yards and it really wasn't playing the game. So we rechecked the program seems good, the rifle's nice and consistent. We then had a closer look at the barrel that we put on it. As we said at the time, it's not one that we'd done ourselves, it's just one that we had acquired, and I can safely say it's no good. So what we're going to be doing is pulling that barrel off and just sticking a BSA one on. We know the one on the M3 is really quite good, and this one's from the same batch. So hopefully this one should be as good. First thing we've got to do to it though is re-crown the end. The crown on this has seen better days. Looks like it's suffered a little bit of damage while it's been in storage. So we're setting it up, getting it to run nice and true for the new crown to be put on. This setup's a little overkill for just putting a crown on, but a couple of people asked how it was done in the previous video, so I thought I'd just show a little bit of setup footage while we talk about the rifle. So you'll see in the video that we move the dial indicator in and out of the barrel, checking the concentricity at 2 points. When the dial indicator's fully in the barrel, we adjust the concentricity using the outer bolts. And since the stylus is resting on the bottom of the barrel, we have to tighten the highs and loosen the lows. Once the outer bolts are adjusted, we move the dial indicator to the outermost edge of the barrel, check it for concentricity and adjust using the inner bolts. This time, because we're using the outer bolts as a pivot point, the adjustment is reversed, so we have to tighten the lows and loosen the highs. A little counterintuitive, but once you do a few, you get the hang of it. Anyway, we're just going backwards and forwards. I don't know how much I'll show you, we'll probably just do a couple passes and then we'll start crowning it. And this rifle I think is going to be my bench rest rifle. We've started a little bench rest league down the range and it's a good bit of fun. 25 metres, standard UK bench rest rules, so you can have a front rest but you can't have a rear rest. The rifle has to be shouldered and not resting on a bag. You can use a hand for support, but it just can't be rested on anything. I think the rifle's turned out too good to just have it sitting on a shelf somewhere, so doing the bench rest competition should give it a little bit of use and stop it gathering dust. Once we've gone back and forward a couple times with the dial indicator and the barrel's running concentric over 2 points, we know the axis of the barrel is aligned with the lathe and we can start doing some work to it. We're grinding the crown a little different than the last barrel you saw, and that's just because of the damage. We've experimented with a few different crown shapes and if we're honest, there hasn't been one that stood out over the other, and as long as the rifling ends nicely, it's going to perform well. There's quite a bit of science behind the powder burner crowns, but I don't think it's directly applicable to air guns. So we're not too fussy on what type of crown it is, as long as it's nice. Once the crown's ground, we can flip the barrel over in the lathe, part off the excess and start working on the other features. Now luckily, this barrel already has a 12mm shank machined onto it, so we're just going to be using that. If it didn't have a shank, what we'd have to do is set it up again in the spider, cut the shank on it, then cut all the features concentric with the shank. But luckily the Red Wolf shank's quite long, so we can just grip it in the 3-jaw and work off that. So first operation is to face it to length, then cut the O-ring grooves. Has 2 O-ring grooves around the transfer port of a Red Wolf. Since we're going to be using 10x1 O-rings and the shank is 12mm, the O-ring grooves need to be around a mil deep on the radius. We cut them a little shy of that just to give the O-rings a little bit of squeeze so that you don't get any air escaping around the transfer port as you fire the rifle. Then we just 45 the end and start boring out the lead. So first thing we do is come in with a micro boring bar and just remove the rifling. Once the rifling's removed, we can come back with a 4.8mm drill bit. We bore it first just to make sure the rifling doesn't pull the drill off centre. Once it's been drilled out, we can cut the O-ring groove. So the O-ring that we're going to be using is a 4.3 by 1.5 and the hole that we've got in the breech is 4.8. So what we do is cut the O-ring groove around 2.3mm deep on the diameter, get it to width, put an O-ring in there and test the squeeze against the pellet probe. You want a little bit of resistance on the pellet probe so that the O-ring's going to seal, but you don't want it too tight that it's a struggle to get the pellet in. If the O-ring groove's too tight, as the pellet tries to go through the O-ring groove, the pellet probe will push it sideways and you may end up damaging the skirt. Once that's done, we can do the final operation in the breech, which is grinding the lead. So we're coming back with our pink grinding stone. So we've found this stone to be quite good for grinding leads. It's got a nice shallow angle on it, and all we're going to be doing is touching the grinding stone off on the bore zero the DRO, then move the stone into the bore. This will just make it easier for the pellet to be fed into the rifling without the pellet hitting a stop or a step in the bore. So the rifling will start just after the transfer port, and with a little bit of material removed there, the pellet will be fed into the rifling nice and easily. Finally, we just got to move the barrel over to the mill. We got it set up in a 4-sided collet block, drill the set screw locations, and also drill the transfer port. The transfer port on this barrel is going to be drilled out to 2.8mm. I'm not sure exactly what a standard Red Wolf barrel is, but 2.8mm sounds about right for this type of rifle. And then once all the machining is done, it's just a quick polish up job, just with a bootlace. This barrel has been sitting for a little while, so it does have a small amount of surface rust on the bore, so we're just going to use some auto salt and get that out. But my dad's already done the polishing, so I didn't get no footage of that. Right then guys, so there's the barrel all machined up and fitted to the Red Wolf. Unfortunately we can't use our silver shroud. The barrel that we replaced was quite a bit shorter than this one. So this was the original barrel that was on the rifle, quite a bit shorter. Again, not a barrel that I machined up, but just one we had lying around. But unfortunately it was no good. This one however, I'm more than happy with. So this is a 50-yard target, all 5 shots. I didn't spend much time at 50 yards this week if I'm honest. We've got a little bench rest competition going on down the range, and this week was our scoring week. So I used the Red Wolf for that, and I'm really quite happy with how the rifle performed. We scored a 240 on the bench rest card, so nowhere near a competitive level, but quite good for just a bit of fun at the range. So you might be wondering what's wrong with this barrel here. So this barrel, I don't really know the history on it, it's just one we've accumulated over a little bit of time. It looks like a standard Red Wolf barrel. It's got the turned down shank here, but it's also had the end cut off. So it's got no choke on this end, and obviously it's quite a bit shorter than a standard Red Wolf barrel would be. So not doing the work myself, I don't really know what's gone on with it, but we do know one thing in that it doesn't shoot. At 50 yards, even trying to get 5 pellets within these circles here was quite a challenge, and ultimately it was no good. So the main problem with this barrel I think is the breech. A pellet doesn't load cleanly. It feels quite gritty as you push the pellet in with a pellet probe, and also the pellets do tend to catch on the end here quite a bit. Another thing you notice is that if you push a pellet through it, one side of the pellet is more rifled than the other side. And looking very closely, the camera won't pick this up, but if you look down the end against the light, you can actually see the rifling, or the breech, has been machined eccentric to the rifling. So as the pellet gets loaded in, it's not being loaded in the middle of the rifling, it's off to one side. So that can't be good for the accuracy. The main thing though is that the Red, White and Blue Wolf is finally shooting really nice. I'm happy with the way the rifle's performing now. It was a little disappointing with the original barrel, but sticking the BSA barrel on it really did sharpen it up a bit. But with that all being said, that's going to about do it for this one guys. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.